The echo that refused to vanish. When love became louder than time. Seoul was never silent, but that night it forgot how to breathe. The city lights flickered as though they had overheard a secret too heavy to carry. Because somewhere behind closed doors, two voices intertwined again. Not on a stage, not in front of screaming crowds, but in a room that smelled of dust and midnight. A guitar string trembled. A breath followed. And then words that did not belong to any lyric sheet, words no company had approved. If I vanish tomorrow, will you still remember the night I stayed? Jungkook's voice. Fragile, trembling, but carved into eternity. And then came the answer, deep, unshaken, as if it had been waiting for centuries. Even if the world forgets you, I will carry your echo. Taehyung's voice. No stage lights. No microphones. Just truth. The recording wasn't meant to escape. But it did. A staff member, or perhaps a friend, or maybe fate itself, nobody knew. All ARMY knew was that a 30-second clip appeared online, blurry, cracked, raw. Enough. More than enough. Because in those 30 seconds, silence ended. The hashtags burned across the sky. Hashtag the echo, hashtag Taekook unwritten, hashtag truth never dies. Billboards in Shibuya lit up again. Not with faces. Not with slogans. Just one sentence in white letters against black. The echo you hear is not an accident. New York Times wrote, a love song disguised as rebellion? The Guardian whispered, when idols stop being shadows. But ARMY didn't ask. They didn't need to. They wrote only this. Let the echo live. Let it be louder than time. Let them breathe. Inside HYBE's towers, panic had a new face. Emails leaked again, this time sharper, colder. If they continue, our industry will collapse with them. But outside, the world was already collapsing into something else. Something freer. Something unstoppable. And then came the night that history chose. A live stream unannounced. No filters. No production. Just a bare room, 2 chairs, and 2 young men who had grown tired of running. Jungkook entered first. His eyes carried sleepless nights, his hands restless on his knees. I said something that night, he began, and I've been afraid ever since. But an echo doesn't stop just because you close your mouth. He lifted his head. A faint smile broke through. Because someone else will always answer. And right then, Taehyung entered. He didn't sit. He didn't introduce himself. He just stood behind Jungkook, a hand resting on his shoulder. His voice was low, steady. If tonight is a confession, then let it echo forever. I'm not hiding anymore. Millions wept. Not out of shock. But out of recognition. Because the world finally heard what it had been suspecting all along. This was not scandal. This was not rebellion. This was love refusing to vanish. CNN called it the echo that shook the industry. BBC wrote, history written in whispered voices. Korean outlets had no headline strong enough. But ARMY named it simply. The echo. Dodger was the spark. Stay awake was the ember. The fire was the blaze. The confession was the truth. And now the echo was eternity. Because echoes do not die. They travel. They wait. They return. And in that room after the live stream ended, Jungkook looked at Taehyung with eyes still wet. Do you think the world is ready? He asked again. This time Taehyung's smile was brighter than any stage light. The world doesn't need to be ready. We are. And that's enough. From that night on, history no longer belonged to companies, sponsors, or headlines. It belonged to 2 hearts that refused to vanish. It belonged to an echo that promised never to fade. And somewhere in the quiet corners of Seoul, if you listened closely, you could still hear it. Not music. Not a performance. But an echo carrying the simplest truth the world had ever heard. We are still here. Together. The storm that learned to sing. When the world could no longer pretend. The echo did not die. It traveled. Across oceans, across cities, across the fragile line that separates rumor from truth. And soon the storm began. 1. The unfinished note. 3 days after the echo livestream, a file surfaced online. Not a full song. Not even a demo. Just a single unfinished note, like someone had pressed record and then abandoned it halfway. A piano chord. A breath. A whisper. We were never meant to hide forever. It was Jungkook's voice. And though the clip lasted no more than 10 seconds, it was enough to split the world open. Forums exploded. Theories bled across timelines. Some called it a planned leak. Others swore it was sabotage. But ARMY knew better. They didn't ask why. They asked only, when will the note find its ending? 2. The world's witness. In Paris, the Eiffel Tower flickered with an unexpected blackout, only to light up again with 4 words projected onto its iron skin. The echo still lives. In Sao Paulo, subway walls carried graffiti. Dodger. Awake. Fire. Confession. Echo. Storm. In Jakarta, fans gathered at midnight, their voices uniting under the rain, chanting, "We are not shadows. We are not afraid." What began as whispers had become chants. What began as chants had become hymns. And what began as hymns now threatened to become a revolution. 3. The company's silence. Inside HYBE, silence became more dangerous than words. Meetings stretched until dawn. Investors demanded control. Emails leaked again, colder than before. If containment fails, we risk losing everything. But how do you contain something that no longer belongs to you? How do you silence an echo that has already found millions of mouths to carry it forward? The company tried. Clips disappeared. Posts were deleted. Hashtags were buried by bots. But like fire under ashes, every attempt to bury only made it spread wider. 4. The second recording. It happened on a rainy night in Busan. A grainy video, no longer than 40 seconds, appeared on Twitter. 2 figures under a single umbrella, walking quickly down an empty street. The camera shook, but the sound was clear. Jungkook humming. A melody fragile, almost like it didn't want to be born. Then Taehyung's voice, low, steady, carrying the words the world had been waiting for. If silence was our prison, then music will be our escape. The video vanished within minutes. The account disappeared. But it was too late. The storm had learned to sing. 5. The manifesto. This time, ARMY did not just react. They responded. A thread began on Twitter, then spread to Instagram, then to TikTok. It wasn't just fanfiction, not just analysis, not just speculation. It was a manifesto written by thousands of hands across the world. It read, "We no longer ask permission. If they are punished for love, then we will love louder." Dodger was the spark. Stay awake was the ember. The fire was the rebellion. The confession was the truth. The echo was eternity. The storm will be freedom. 6. The media cracks. Journalists could no longer look away. CNN declared, "The industry's greatest lie finally breaking?" BBC wrote, "When silence becomes unsustainable." Korean newspapers hesitated, torn between fear and duty. But one brave journalist wrote in bold letters, "If this is scandal, then love itself is scandal." The article spread like wildfire, quoted, shared, translated into 20 languages in less than a day. The storm was no longer waiting for permission. 7. The hidden room. And then another leak. This time it wasn't blurry. It wasn't distant. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. 2 chairs. A wooden table. A microphone between them. Jungkook's head bowed low, hair covering his eyes. Taehyung sitting upright, gaze steady, hands folded. And then Jungkook spoke. "We were told to hide. To erase. To forget. But the truth doesn't vanish just because someone signs a paper." Taehyung leaned closer to the mic, his voice steady as stone. "We are not asking anymore. We are telling you." The screen cut black. No credits. No watermark. Just a silence heavy enough to crush every lie that came before it. 8. The world burns. That night, Seoul's billboards lit up again. This time, not one phrase. Not a cryptic code. But a full sentence that painted the skyline. "The storm has begun." Crowds gathered, filming, crying, chanting. Not just fans, strangers, journalists, even critics who once dismissed it all as delusion. Because something larger than fandom had been born. This was no longer just a story about Jungkook and Taehyung. This was about truth daring to exist. This was about love refusing to wear chains. 9. The question. In a quiet room far away, Jungkook scrolled through his phone. His hands shook as he watched the clips, the chants, the faces of millions who now carried his secret like it was their own. "Are we ready for this?" He whispered, his voice barely audible. Taehyung sat beside him, leaning back against the wall, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He didn't answer immediately. He let the silence stretch, heavy like the pause before thunder breaks. Then, softly, steadily, he spoke. We are not the ones who need to be ready. The world is. And in that moment, the echo grew louder than any stage could hold. The storm was no longer a warning. It was here. And everyone knew this was not the end. This was the beginning of something the industry could no longer rewrite, could no longer silence, could no longer own. Dodger was the spark. Stay Awake was the ember. The fire was the rebellion. The confession was the truth. The echo was eternity. And the storm? The storm was freedom. The storm had spoken, but what came after thunder was dawn, one that refused to wait. For nights the world didn't sleep. Clips replayed, theories spread, yet ARMY no longer asked questions. They waited, not for rumors but for a beginning. At sunrise in Seoul, a broadcast hijacked every screen. Jungkook with a guitar, Taehyung with silence. No logos, no PR, just truth. We are done hiding, they said. What followed wasn't a song or a press conference, but fragments of courage. If this is the end, let it be our beginning. Millions wept, not for perfection but for honesty. Chaos erupted in HYBE's towers, but outside, silence collapsed. Headlines blazed, BTS members defy silence. Times Square lit up, fans gathered worldwide, graffiti declared, if this is a crime, let us all be guilty. A handwritten letter signed J&T sealed it, silence killed us. Obedience erased us. We are done pretending. The world shook, industries panicked, but dawn had already arrived, uninvited, unstoppable. A rebirth. Because when two hearts speak, even time must bend.